Welcome to the NSF Noyce New Awardee Session, co-hosted by the American Association for the Advancement of Science and the National Science Foundation. First, congratulations on receiving this transformative award. We look forward to getting to know you and helping to share your work in the coming years. But for now, please introduce yourself in the chat. My name is Jennifer Carinci, and I am a Program Director at AAAS and PI of our Noyce Award. Closed captioning is available by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. And today's program is designed to orient you to your new responsibility and help answer some of your questions. Following my remarks, NSF Noyce Program Officers will give you the inside scoop on requirements and opportunities. Next, from NSF's Division of Grants and Agreements, we'll share award management tips. Then Maggie Carlin of ICF will explain Noyce annual reporting. We will leave time at the end for questions across all speakers. In the meantime, please enter your questions in the chat as we go to take advantage of our presenters' expertise. We are recording this session. Slides are now available via the link my colleague is dropping into the chat. The video archive will also soon be available at the same link by next week for your reference. For those of you who are unfamiliar with AAAS, we are the world's largest multidisciplinary scientific society and publisher of the Science family of journals. The Inclusive STEM Ecosystems for Equity and Diversity, or ICED unit, is home to many programs around broadening participation and strengthening the STEM workforce through education. This includes our work with the Noyce program, where our support fosters research, innovation, and connections across Noyce PIs through in-person and virtual professional development convening, as well as research generation and dissemination via our ARISE initiative, which we hope you will all become contributors. Check out nsfnoyce.org and AAASARISE.org websites for further resources and opportunities. Finally, as part of welcoming you to the Noyce community, we wanted to tell you a little bit about the impact PIs like you have made. But to do the value of Noyce justice, you need to hear directly from some of our program's outstanding former scholars and fellows, making a difference in high-needs school districts across the country. We hope you enjoy this inspirational video.
I would say becoming a teacher is hard. It's a hard profession.
My first year teaching was during COVID-19. I was baptized by fire. Going into the Noyce Scholars Program, I did not expect to learn to be spoiled with experience.
The Noyce Scholarship has given us a better base.
I have not been alone this entire time, especially through the Noyce program. I have met my people, my teacher people.
Now I have these other peers and colleagues at other places that I now can reach out to, because I know I have someone in my corner that understands what I'm going through as a new teacher.
You want to be able to go to a like-minded place where people are willing to share their experiences and to share what's working really well and even share what's not working well.
The most impactful thing was just being a Noyce Fellow, being selected. I don't think I would have had a genuine opportunity to be a teacher without it, and I would not have been able to afford grad school with initial certification had it been without Noyce.
A lot of times where I'm from, there aren't that many resources. There aren't a lot of opportunity where I'm from. So a lot of people have to leave. And when they leave and take these opportunities, it takes them further and further away that they can't come back or they don't want to come back. But, you know, if this scholarship can keep you near, keep you in a place that's near and keep you close to the community you want to serve.
I had really amazing examples of what a teacher leader looked like. Those connections that they helped make are really what sort of spurred me to continue on.
As a scholar, I felt like I was able to experience the piece of, what does make a great teacher, try something new while being supported by a master teacher at that time.
Seeing the other Noyce scholars, seeing how they work through things, it made me realize it was okay to want to try new things and to be different.
There are these wonderful opportunities to be part of a community where you are working together and you don't feel as isolated. To me, that is the biggest benefit.
In the actual classroom, my clinicals, I learned how to adapt, how to fine tune, how to really mold my teaching strategy. When I left the Noyce Scholars Program, I did have that forward thinking of my students are not just going to need simply a math teacher, but someone who can show them proper ways to think and to think critically.
I did it because I love science, and a lot of it was based on science, and they could help me with science. And then I wanted to be a teacher all of a sudden. I didn't know I wanted to be, but you know, and it all the parts that I wanted to be were covered by this scholarship, and all the things that I wanted to do, it was there.
Those professors that sought out and have developed the program that we have truly want education to improve, and they really want to be able to send out amazing teachers that are going to do amazing things.
You never think you can do it until, you start. The first round I was a scholar. I don't know if I knew what I was getting myself into. The second round now as a master teacher, I truly feel like I'm making a change. I'm making a difference.
People who work in a high need school, I believe, have one of the most rewarding positions they could have.
I would now like to introduce you to NSF Noyce Program Officer Tom Kim, who will lead the next portion of our program. We hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit directly from some of the graduates of programs like yours.
Thank you, Jennifer. Welcome, everyone. I'm in the unenviable position of having to follow that. And so forgive me if I fall short, but hopefully you've all gotten a taste of what the true value of the Noyce program is. Ironically, I'm the one that suggested that we actually do that. And so now I'm stuck following it. So I guess I get to basically bake in my own juices now. But welcome. This is the new awardee session. You are here primarily, I believe, because you are now new to the space of the NSF Noyce program. And what we'd like to provide you, in addition to the inspiration that I hope you just gleaned from that previous video, some useful operational information and references for you to implement your project as effectively as you possibly can. And so with that, I'm going to ask Jennifer to repost a poll so that you can all see who your peers are in the room. And it is now popped up. So please share with us what your track of Noyce project is. And from what I can tell, it looks like there's a significant fraction of you who are track 1 awardees, which is not a great surprise. A good number of capacity building as well as track 4, which is encouraging for all of us to see. These are facets of the program that we've been trying to develop over the past several years in the Noyce program. And so with that, I'm going to share a screen so that we can proceed with the talk. So once again, welcome. My name is Tom Kim, as Jennifer intimated. I am a program director in the Noyce program and currently serving as co-lead for the program. Here we go. Congratulations, you've got a Noyce Grant Award. But you should also be aware that, condolences, you're on the hook because now you've got to act upon your Noyce Award. And as you can see, as the first scholar said in the presentation, it's hard. You wouldn't be doing this if it was easy, because if it was easy, we wouldn't need to be supporting this with grant funds. So you've taken on an important but challenging task. And hopefully this session will be one of many steps that we can take to facilitate your ability to succeed as a Noyce awardee. So now what? Well, First off, your first line of defense is the Noyce Program Officer team, basically all of my colleagues and myself. And so we'll play a little game. We've got all of the names on the right of the screen and all of the pictures on the left. In your own mind, play the guessing game. Who do you think Kathleen Bergen is in terms of the photos? And so, any guesses? Keep it to yourself. We don't need to be public about it, but we can play along. Okay, so Kathleen there on the top left. Mike Ferrara, for any of you who are one of Mike's projects, see if you can scan and discern him out of the field. And if you guessed the gentleman on the lower right-hand corner, you are correct. Jennifer Lewis is next up. Any of you are Jennifer's projects? Jennifer is situated there next to Mike. Sandra Richardson, who is the program lead, but is actually on detail doing other things within the Division of Undergraduate Education for the time being. But some of you are still listed as her awardees, and Sandra's there in the middle of the bottom row. Michelle Camacho is next to Kathleen. Bob Mays is situated there next to Sandra. Hopefully you figured out who Tom Kim is in this array of pictures from having seen me earlier. So I'm in the middle of the top row. Sue Carson is here on the lower left. And Sue has complained to me that this picture is a little out of date. So don't be surprised if she looks slightly different than the picture here. Bonnie Green is next to me. And then last but not least, we have John Haddock in the upper right-hand corner. So this at the moment is the Noyce Program Officer team. And when you have questions, as you'll see later on in the presentation, please feel free to contact us. We are here to help you. Okay, we are not the gatekeepers, we are the facilitators for the Noyce program. And so never let your inhibitions hold you back from asking us a question. Questions are the currency of what we do around here. Additionally, you should register your project with AAAS, basically the nsfnoyce.org website, which Jennifer intimated earlier. Your project, once it's registered, will sit in a database and will be accessible to prospective scholars, colleagues who are also interested in Noyce, and peers. And I'm personally hoping that you can use this resource as a way to expand your network and gain additional knowledge for how you might want to operate in your project. And so once again, we're kind of a family. And so as family, please feel free to lean on each other with questions, points of interest, possible collaborations, because this is not the end of the journey, this is the beginning. Other resources, there's the nsfnoyce.org website, which we referred to. The NSF website is nsf.gov. So not a com, not an org, but it is a .gov. If you look up nsf.org, you're going to go to a completely different place. So avoid doing that. Once again, there are other conferences such as this, either virtual or face-to-face. And there are regional Noyce conferences that we hope, knock on wood, will be held in the coming year. Once again, you can refer to other Noyce PIs by looking through the NSF Noyce database. And once again, most importantly, feel free to contact your cognizant program officer. We're here for you. Okay, and last but not least, for this portion of the talk, if as an awardee, you are now on the hook to sort of pay it back or pay it forward, however you want to look at it, there's an opportunity for you to serve as a reviewer for the upcoming Noyce competition. And being experienced as someone who's garnered a Noyce award, your qualifications are very much in need for the program as we consider any future proposals. If you're interested, contact your program officer, send an email with your vita if you so wish. There's an additional survey where we actually collate all of the information for prospective reviewers, but we can refer you to that if you contact us directly. And so with that, I am going to pass the baton to my colleague, Mike Ferrara, And Mike, I will handle the slides if you wish, and I'll let you take it away.
Great, Tom. I wasn't sure if I was sharing screen. So thank you very much. I'm just gonna take you through some guidance, some information about reporting and some additional internal resources. I can't echo what Tom said with more emphasis. We are here to support you. We understand that there are a lot of different really important things that go into managing a successful project in any NSF program. And Noyce, there's a lot on your shoulders. You're working with your scholars, you're working with your partner districts. Sometimes balancing that can be a challenge. And we are here to help talk things through with you, to answer questions. We are not here, I've heard PIs in the past say, well, I thought I was going to get in trouble, or wow, you're really like a real person. We are not here to get you in trouble. And I'm pretty sure we're all real people. I guess I can't be 100% sure, but we are here for you. So Tom, slide.
Oh, sorry.
There we go. So one of the most comprehensive resources for both pre-award, and you've already gone through the pre-award process because you submitted your proposals and were funded in this last cycle, and the post-award process is the PAPPG, the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide. This is pretty dense. There's a lot in here, and we are not advocating that you go and try to memorize all of the PAPPG. There are definitely some things that are really useful. I know there are sections that folks go to quite a bit. A common one is, what are the rules for participant support, for instance, or some things of that type. I would advise you keep this handy. It'll be useful. All of the post-award materials are going to be helpful at various points for you as you are now walking the path and managing your awards. A lot of you are, as Tom noted, are here because you've received capacity building grants. So you'll be writing another proposal in the coming year or 2 or 3, depending. And we hope that you will use the PAPPG to strengthen those proposals. One thing that's important, so this link here is to NSF 20-1. The PAPPG is generally modified just slightly every year. So what I would suggest is possibly, if you're not sure, just check that date to make sure that you got the most updated PAPPG. It's not likely that there will be major changes year by year, but there can be some in some places. And what's nice is each year there's a great overview of what has changed. So if you're not sure, if you're like, boy, am I not remembering this piece right? That's great. If anything that you read in here is not making sense, or there are times when it may feel like it's saying 2 different things, things like that, this is, again, another great time to reach out to your program officer and say, boy, it says this, but I'm not sure. And we're happy to put it in context or clarify for you. Go ahead, Tom. So one of the most important things from our side for you each year is your reporting. So we're going to talk a little bit about reporting and then some of the other resources that you have. Many of you may already be familiar with research.gov or Fastlane. You may have submitted your proposals through there or other proposals through there. Research.gov is sort of a place where there's a lot of different things. The things that are most likely to be relevant to you in the coming year or years with your project is that you may need to change a PI or co-PI. People move institutions. You may realize you need to bring in new expertise, things of that type. So you can do that through research.gov. You can change your participant costs, all right? So there are pretty significant flexibilities given to rebudgeting, but one of the things that you cannot do is move money designated for participants into money designated for non-participants without permission from the NSF. So that would let you put in a formal request and explain what it is that you're trying to do in that regard. Of course, just as a reminder, 60% of the total direct costs budget must be on F1, must be scholarships or stipends for your participants. So you can request no-cost extensions. So no-cost extensions are pretty common. So a no-cost extension says, okay, let's say your initial award was 5 years. Okay. A no-cost extension allows us to give you permission to extend that by a year in 1 year increments at a time. You know, we understand that while you try to adhere to the budget that you gave to us, things change over time. You may recruit more folks in 1 year, fewer in another. We're seeing a lot this year, as you might expect. A lot of projects that had travel funds weren't able to use them. And also perhaps professional development funds were slightly underused or things of that type. Well, that means you have a little bit of money left over. We'd like you to use it for what it was designated for, but we will give you some more time, and you know, we will keep an eye and we will interact with you. You know, if you think, boy, you know, I just misestimated how much I needed for this, I've got some extra, reach out to your program officer. I know, a recurring theme, but an important one. And we're happy to talk through a spend out plan, a change in plans if you just would like us as a sounding board, or if you want to just check to make sure that any rebudgeting is allowable. So the first time it's pretty immediate, your program officer will review it. After this first no cost extension, it's NSF approved. It goes through a additional scrutiny. So there's something that's very important. Many of you who have track 1, 2, 3, 4 grants, I'm not sure about all the track 4s, and it's not true for everyone across all of the tracks, have what are called continuing grants, meaning, for instance, let's just for ease of the discussion, say that you requested $1 million over 5 years, and magically it worked out that your budget every year was $200,000 exactly. So often you will see an award set up so that you get the first 3 years worth of money. So you'd get that first $600,000. And then after the 3rd year, assuming everything's going well, we release the next $200,000. And after the 4th year, we'll release the next. That's important because something that, and if you're unclear on this, please do talk to your program officer. NSF funds, most NSF funds and the funds that are used for your awards expire in 7 years. So after 7 years from the beginning of the fiscal year where they were appropriated, those funds have to be given back to the Treasury. They don't come back to the NSF. So if you're thinking about no cost extensions, even if you're maybe a year ahead and you're like, well, I think we're going to need this, it would be great for you to reach out to us and we can take a look and say, great, no problem. That money still has a lot of lifespan left. Sometimes we have to give you different advice if your money's going to expire in maybe a shorter time period than you're initially planning to spend it. So for those of you, you're all at the beginning of your road. This isn't likely to be a big issue now, but do know that as you're thinking about no cost extensions, we would love to be a resource to make sure that there are no surprise deadlines or timelines that hinder your plans. Some other things in research.gov, addition of a sub-awardee. Not overwhelmingly often do folks add subawardees, but it certainly happens and you can do it there. And then something that you're all going to do, the submission of annual reports. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about annual reports. So Tom, thank you. So 2 quick things before we dive a little more deeply into annual reports. Both Fastlane and research.gov have excellent help desks that you can reach by phone or by email. We don't often, as program officers, see the same view of the systems as you. So you may say, well, I'm having trouble with this dashboard. We don't have an easy way or sometimes a way at all to access it. So while we might be able to help you, and you can always ask us first, if you know that it's an issue with the IT system, Fastlane or research.gov, we really strongly recommend that you go directly to the respective help system that you need. They are very polite, responsive, quick. I've seen them untangle some things that were quite knotted, and you know they do it wonderfully. So we just want to make sure that this was in the presentation so that you're aware that this is going to be a really important resource if you have any challenges with the systems. Okay, Tom? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about those annual reports and some other reports. So there are 4 types of project reports, okay? So the annual report is the report you file every year, every 12 months, give or take, on your project, about your project. Your final report, I'm jumping around on the list a little bit. Your final report is simply your final annual report. So it's the annual report for your final year. We'll talk a little bit in a moment about the things that go into annual reports and what we're looking for as program officers here in the Noyce program. But the final report, while it's not required, we always suggest that maybe as you're writing a final report, you take a look back and add a little bit of extra information to tell us the whole story of what's happened over the however many years your project has been around. So that final report on paper, again, is just the final annual report, but it can be a chance to recap, brag a little, share all the wonderful things that you've done. So the other 2 types of reports, interim reports, are not as common, but sometimes based on conversations or things that have come up, we may ask you to file an interim report. That's just a report that happens outside of that regular 1-year interval. So we can get some additional information from you about how your project is going. Often it would be about a specific aspect, but it's a pretty flexible device. And then your project outcomes report is the public facing summary of all the wonderful things you've done. So that is, generally your annual reports are not available to the public. But the project outcomes report, it's a little bit shorter. It's really just a paragraph or 2. They give you some guidelines about word numbers, but it's a chance for you to just sort of encapsulate, hey, I was awarded this grant. We did all these wonderful things. And of course, these are taxpayer funds. We take that very seriously. And this is your chance to let the taxpayers know that you've been really positive, great stewards of that money. So let's talk a little bit about the annual report. So again, they detail progress of the supported project and how you're spending your funds. So there's a little bit, some of you I know are experienced Noyce PIs, but there's a little bit of a terminology confusion sometimes. So annual reports are due 90 days before that 1-year mark. So if your project started June 1st, let's say, it's going to be due 90 days before that. You have that whole 90-day period to get it in, and we would like to review it. If your project if your report has not been submitted and approved by your program officer by the time that 1-year window comes, the report becomes overdue. Now, a couple of days, sometimes that can be okay. We really don't like that because that can hold up other actions. It can hold up other grants that are being awarded to your institution. It can hold up some of the things we talked about on the last page, changes of PIs, no cost extensions, all of those things. You need to have your reports up to date for a lot of mechanical reasons so that we can continue to work with your institutions and with your teammates. And so, sorry, I was just looking at Kathleen's note down in the chat, my apologies. And so, very important. So again, the report covers the previous 12 months. PIs and co-PIs may create or edit and submit. If you go on research.gov to the reporting section, there's a wonderful template that tells you exactly what's in all of the boxes that you're going to fill in for your report. There's also here's a link to some great FAQs. So I'm going to just talk a little bit more about some things that we look for in reports for the Noyce program. So Tom, go ahead. So what do we want to know? How have you made progress to your goals? Well, all annual reports start with a statement of the project goals. What was accomplished? What have you learned? What did you change? And what are the things you want to share? We see student work, we see pictures, we see all different types of things included with all of this information. What's the project produced? Have you created publications, conference presentations by you or your scholars? Some projects have scholars going to different conferences and presenting or facilitating. Do you have a website or brochures? one thing that's very important, and I would highlight it if I had control, external evaluation report. We want to know what feedback you are getting from your evaluator so that we can see that you're being responsive to that feedback, right? So it's very important that you include an evaluation report if one is created, and generally one should be. That would be something that would be part of your project. And one exception is track 4 projects sometimes have more robust advisory boards, so feedback from your advisory board. And we'll talk a little bit about this again in the changes in problems section. We want to know who else has been involved. Your academic partners, industry partners, your school districts. There are a lot of projects that work with community groups. Whoever you're working with, whoever your partners are, you're going to tell us about those partners and how they contributed to the project. What impacts are you having? Not only what have you done, but why is it doing good? Changes in problems. Sometimes I know that PIs, especially first-time PIs, get a little nervous when they get to this section. And I just want to make it really clear. No grant, I don't care if it's your 50th one or your first one, ends up rolling out exactly the way you put it on the page. And in fact, some of them have to change a decent amount. We want you to remain within scope. If you need to make significant changes, please reach out and we'll help you talk through that. But don't think that you want, fewer things in the changes and problems section is better. Just tell us what happened. We'll give you feedback. And a lot of times, because we've seen a lot of projects and we've seen a lot of the innovation that all of you have, we can give you some suggestions that you may not have thought of, right? This is where you definitely want to point by point. Many evaluation reports have a section for suggestions. Give each one and tell us how you're going to address it. Okay. And then what are you going to do in the next year? A lot of it's going to be, we're going to continue to recruit if that's appropriate. We're going to continue to offer induction support or licensure or whatever the main parts of your project is. But there may be other things, especially thinking about things that came up in the changes or problems or cool things that you found out. Well, we found this new partner. We're going to continue to explore and grow that out. A lot of different things. We really, really, really value your candor and the detail you put into the reports. Okay, Tom, go ahead. Okay, so a little bit more. What have been disseminated, how and where? The Noyce community is so creative. We know licensing teachers is work. Preparing people for the hard work of the classroom, as one scholar said in the video, it's invigorating, but it's challenging. And you come up with such creative ways to recruit scholars, to support scholars, to make them just the absolute best they can be in the districts that you're sending them out to. Share it at conferences, write it up. We want to know all the wonderful things you're learning, but more importantly, we want the community to know and for them to be able to take advantage of all the brilliance that you have. So some special recording requirements for track 1, 2, and 3 projects. So specifics of recruitment and retention, the number of recipients supported compared to the number proposed, and the majors. Recipients who withdrew, were dismissed, or are in repayment, and demographic data for scholars and fellows. So one thing that's important, sometimes this is unclear, we do not want you to include scholar names in your annual report. So if you want to be able to say, refer to a specific scholar, just anonymize their name or give them a code, something like that. We try to keep identifying information out of the report. So don't put your scholar names. And then the evaluation report I've already talked about, critically important. You're paying your evaluators for a reason. They are such a crucial part of your team. And again, they're there to help you succeed and to help you just sort of think through, right? Just because your evaluator maybe has to give you some rough news, that's not a bad thing. That means they're doing their job. Okay, all done. So I think, Tom, go ahead.
All right, so next up, we have Sue Carson.
Hello, everybody. I thought that Mike was gonna continue with the annual report for track 4, but I will.
Go ahead, Sue. I was going to just wrap that up quickly, but I know we need to move along.
Okay, so track 4 is the Noyce research. For these, annual reports need to clearly detail what's been learned, the data collected, any data analyses, findings, external evaluation and/or advisory board report or recommendations. And the expectation of the track 4 Noyce research is that publications will result from the research. So some additional reporting requirements for track 1 through 3, please complete the annual data collection for Noyce monitoring through ICF International. You'll hear about that more directly from them today. For TF and MTF, teaching fellows and master's teaching fellows only, you will submit an annual cost sharing report through Fastlane. This is not the same as your annual report. It's not part of your annual report. You'll get another notification to do this. And at the conclusion of all track awards, you will have a final report due within a 100-day period after the project's expiration date. The final report is actually just your last annual report, but we do encourage you to report on that particular year, but we encourage you also to kind of give an overview, a cumulative overview of what you've accomplished there as well for us to look at. And then the project outcomes report is also submitted through research.gov. And as Mike mentioned earlier, that is public facing. So we don't approve that. You're going to put that in, and that is what the public is going to see. So it's very important to spend some thought on that and know who the audience for that is. Tom, can you advance? So I'd like to share some general advice. First of all, let me say, check the syllabus. If you have a question, actually the PAPG, not the syllabus, but as you tell your students, you do a lot of the information. I know you're all very familiar with the solicitation and what information is in the solicitation, but I find that a lot of new PIs are not familiar with the kind of information that is in the PAPG. So I highly recommend, as a first line of defense, just look at the index of the PAPG to see if your question is in there. And we also have an FAQ online that a lot of your questions will be answered in. But also importantly, know that you can reach out to your Cognizant Noyce program officer. When you contact us, it will make it much easier for us if you always include your NSF award number in any email or phone communication you have. So I would ask you to put your award number in the subject line of an email. Take time to meet your program officer at, we called it the block party last year, but this new awardee orientation, or at the summit, which is coming up virtually on August 11th, hopefully in person next year. Do contact your program officer in advance if you're considering making changes to the project as funded, including a sub-award, any change to F1, or addition of international travel. As Mike mentioned earlier, and probably as you'll hear more about later, you can make changes outside of the participant support costs and move money around as long as it still fits within the scope of your project. But if you're not sure, reach out to your program officer. Anytime you have questions that arise, please contact us before submitting a request to Fastlane or research.gov. It'd be better to get your questions answered prior to that. Make sure that you are following the guidelines in the solicitation associated with your award. If you were awarded just now this year, your solicitation is 21-578. Requirements do vary depending on the solicitation under which it's funded. So if 3 years from now, we modify and have a new solicitation, 24 dash whatever, there may be new requirements, but those are not your requirements. Your requirements for this award will remain the requirements as listed under 21-578. The PAPG, you'll always look at the most current PAPG. Please take advantage of the networking available at the regional and virtual Noyce conferences, and do plan to attend the National Noyce Summit in future years with a scholar or fellow. Tom, you can advance. Repayment policy for tracks 1, 2, and 3. If you look online at our FAQ, a lot of this information is in more detail there. So if you have this issue, I recommend checking the FAQ and talking with your program officer. But the institution, your institution, not NSF, is responsible for collecting repayment amounts, including interest if applicable, in accordance with the public law. And if you're interested, you can look at the legislation, but your institution will do the collection. That is not necessarily you personally. Your institution probably, hopefully, has a mechanism set up to collect funds. Repayment of scholarships or stipends as loans by individuals who withdraw from the program or fail to complete the service requirement should be payable to the U.S. Treasury. They can pay it directly to the Treasury, but usually they're going to pay it to the institution, and the institution will send it on to the Treasury. All forfeited stipend funds, less whatever administration costs associated with the collection are, do need to be returned to the United States Treasury. Funds collected as repayments cannot be used by the awardee. It doesn't even come to the NSF. It goes directly to the Treasury. Your institution may collect interest if funds are not immediately returned. And again, if you run into any issues with this, please talk to your program officer for additional details.
Okay, thanks, Sue. And so with that, we'll move on to the last section of our discussion, which is opportunities for knowledge generation in Noyce projects. And for this, I'm going to defer to my colleague, Jennifer Lewis. Jennifer?
Thanks, Tom. So all of my colleagues have talked with you about many of the requirements of the Noyce program, and it's my job to get you excited about an opportunity that's available to you when you have a Noyce project, particularly in tracks 1 through 3, because we know track 4 projects are conducting research, so they're definitely engaged in knowledge generation. Many of you may be in academic positions where there's an expectation of scholarship, be it research, scholarship of teaching and learning. Others of you may not have that expectation as a part of your job performance, but it can be a nice thing to have that as part of your portfolio as you're thinking about your career trajectory. So I would like to go to the next slide, Tom. If you are going to be working on a Noyce project, I think it is wonderful if you can take the opportunity to align the Noyce project with some knowledge generation activities that can lead to scholarship. And for this, of course, it has to be some kind of scholarship that you're passionate about, because as we've discussed, there are a lot of things you're doing in the Noyce project. So you need what you're doing for knowledge generation to fit with that and be a natural part of what you're already doing. So my suggestion to you when you're thinking about, well, what could I do if I wanted to do some knowledge generation with my project, is to think about what do you expect to be the challenging aspects of your project. If you've identified something that's likely to be a challenge and you look around and people haven't published a lot on how to deal with that challenge, right there, that is your sweet spot, because very likely other people have that challenge as well. And any new knowledge you can generate about how to deal with that project as you deal with that project, with that problem, will be really appreciated by the whole Noyce community. So that's my first suggestion. My second suggestion is to think about using theoretical frameworks whenever you can, because that's how we develop as a community, knowing that we're talking the same language when we're studying similar phenomena. And also think about what would you normally do in your Noyce project that might generate data naturally that you could use for some knowledge generation. So for example, do you commonly have your pre-service teachers journal about their teaching experiences? Is there a way you could arrange those journal prompts so that they gave you a view of the trajectory of your scholars about some aspect of their growth that you're interested in? And that could become a source of knowledge generation for you. People often also wonder, what could they contribute that is new? And I am going to suggest to you that your particular context, the things that make your program and your institution special, are very likely things that make whatever knowledge you would generate valuable, because they would shed light on understudied aspects of teacher preparation, particularly STEM teacher preparation for high need school districts. We need to understand all the variation in what we're doing so that we can learn how to be effective. As you see, I really envision this as a community of Noyce projects working together to have a collective research enterprise, everyone contributing what they can from what's going on the ground in their project. And in that way, I think we can really get somewhere as a community. Next slide, please. So if that wasn't in a happy place for you, another thing to think about is kind of falling back on your disciplinary knowledge. There's a lot of data out there about how undergraduate students think about their disciplines in persistently incorrect ways. So for example, if I ask all of you, when a chemical bond is broken, is energy released or absorbed? If you're chemists, I know how you answer that. If you're biologists, I think you answered it the opposite way. And therefore, it's not surprising that our students have that idea about bond energy really confused. And for pre-service teachers, if we're not helping them deal with those kinds of disciplinary content knowledge confusions, those get passed on to their students. You can draw on your disciplinary knowledge to think about what are some other content areas where you know these are sticky, incorrect ideas, and you could really make a difference in showing how can you get pre-service teachers to engage with ideas and think about creative ways to teach students to come to the correctly accepted scientific understanding of a phenomenon. A good example from biology is the persistent incorrect idea that natural selection is purposeful. So your discipline has many of these things, and that's probably a place that you can contribute easily based on your Noyce team, which will have disciplinary expertise. Next slide. The other thing I hear when I'm talking with people about research and Noyce projects is the idea that they can't do research because they only have whatever the number is, too small a number. And I think that it's true, you probably can't do a random controlled experiment with a small n, but that is one of many possible research designs. It might be better to think about your group of scholars or master teachers as a population that you are studying rather than a sample. What that means is if you were doing statistical analysis, you wouldn't be using significance testing that rely on having large numbers. You would be describing effect sizes associated with your population. And you can see currently there's a lot of examples in the literature where there are even single case approaches where you follow the trajectory of one person through a set of experiences, and you can do that in a quantitative way. Disability studies, for example, has a lot of examples you can look at to think about how to structure a quantitative study in that way. And I've talked about quantitative work, but when you have small numbers, you have the luxury of really getting rich qualitative data from those people and understanding what their experiences are in great detail. And we need more of that. So think very broadly about the kinds of research designs that are available to you. Next slide. The last thing I'll say here is I mentioned theoretical frameworks are useful for us to have a common language. There are many possible theoretical frameworks that have been relevant to the Noyce program. I have 3 examples up here. Self-efficacy, or how confident do the teachers feel they will be in teaching the subject matter in the classroom. Pedagogical content knowledge, which lately in Zoom land, you might even use technological pedagogical content knowledge, or TPAC, which has to do with knowledge of technology, knowledge of content, and knowledge of pedagogical strategies all together to be an effective teacher. And the solicitation itself talks about cultural competence, which could be expanded and thought about in many different ways. So culturally sustaining pedagogies, culturally relevant pedagogies, all sorts of different ways people have looked at that idea of the role of culture in classroom teaching. So talk with your colleagues. What theoretical constructs have been useful for them in understanding their scholars' progression and the master teacher's progression through the Noyce program? I think we are out of time for questions at this point, and I need to turn over to my colleague Janelle Garcia, but there will be time for questions at the end of the presentation. And certainly if you have questions in the chat, we will be happy to answer them. Tom, would you skip ahead to Janelle's slides, please?
I am actually going to yield the share, and Janelle, you can take over from here.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Congratulations again on your current awards. Okay, here we go. I'm a little technically challenged, but I think I'm good to go now. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a brief discussion on award management. My name is Janelle Garcia. I am the grants officer / grants management specialist for EHR's Division of Undergraduate Education, which houses your award, as well as the portfolio for the Human Resources Development Division, which houses solicitations such as HBCU Up, Hispanic Serving Institutes, and tribal colleges, okay? On this Zoom, accompanying me are my team lead, Rashawn Fire. I don't know if you can wave or say hello to the people, Rashawn.
Hello.
As well as my branch chief, Denise Martin. I believe she's on the call also.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Mike, before I get started, I want to say thank you, DOE program officers. You all did a wonderful job. Mike, you took basically half of my presentation, so I had to take some things out at the last minute. So everyone did an excellent job. But Mike, thank you for going over those reports in detail. So that took, thank you. Okay, so first of all, NSF provides total budget reallocation authority, except for your participant support funds, and if the change is large enough to be considered a change in scope or objective. Either of those 2 actions will require prior written approval from your NSF program officer, okay? So, and also you must adhere to your institution's policies and procedures on reallocating those funds. And, NSF, we cannot override your institution's policies and procedures. So if you find coming to the end of your award that you may have more money in participant support than you need, and you want to move it out of the participant support category to use it for something else, you will have to go into Fastlane or research.gov and submit a request to your program officer to get permission to do that, okay? As well as if there's going to be a change in scope or objectives. Number 3, I'm not sure if Mike spoke on this or not, but overdue reports will stop the processing of any funded or non-funded actions that your institution may need. So please make sure that you are submitting, you or your co-PIs, if they are on other awards, they are submitting their reports on time. And just because they're submitted, please give your program officers enough time to review them, okay? Because just because you submit them, that does not keep a flag from popping up, because it has to be approved by the program officer in order for, in order to stop the overdue flag from appearing, okay? Also, surprisingly, we want you to spend your award funding. Please spend your award funding. Yes, we do want you to be frugal in some ways, but at the end of the day, NSF has provided you the funding for your projects. So we want you to use your funding for your projects, because if you don't spend all of your money, the funding will be sent back to Treasury, which will ultimately decrease NSF's budget. And we don't want that, okay? We want to keep getting budget increases so we can increase the amount of awards we can make to you all. So please spend your awards, okay? This award belongs to your institution. So, and not the PI. So by saying that, if for example, a PI wants to go or accepts a position at another institution, they can't just take the award with them. They must receive permission from the institution in order to do that, okay? So it is your institution's award at the end of the day. As Mike spoke earlier, the PAP guide, the PAPPG, this is your new best friend. The 22 version is currently available in draft format. You're able to go out there and take a look at it, but it'll be released on October the 4th. And what you can do, you can go to Google and you can just put in NSF 22-1 and it'll pop up. And I always advise PIs and sponsor research officers to save a copy to their desktop. So that way it's easily accessible, because that will be your new best friend, okay? The free, I call it a freebie, the free no-cost extension that Mike spoke on, the grantee approved no-cost extension. If for some reason you neglect to or opt to do this one first and you just skip over it and go straight to the NSF approved one, you can't go back to select the freebie. Okay, so make sure if you need a no-cost extension, that the grantee approved no-cost extension is the first one, the first request that you submit. Okay. Another thing, sorry. Project outcomes reports. Once that's submitted, it starts the closing of your award. So if you have other tasks that you want to complete, or you think you may need a no-cost extension when you get to the end of your award, please do not submit your project outcomes report, because it will not allow you to go in there and make any type of request. If you needed a funding supplement, it won't allow you to do that. It will start shutting down the award, because it's your project outcomes report, as Mike said, it's public and it's basically letting everyone know that you're done. This is what happened. This is the outcome. So do not submit that project outcomes report if you will need a funding supplement or no cost extension or any other type of administrative action. Okay. My office, as well as our sister division, the Division of Institute and Audit Support, we perform site visits about to 30 institutions yearly. So if we reach out to you or contact you saying that we want to perform a site visit, please, please respond to us. Don't be nervous. It's not an audit. It will not be a gotcha moment. It's basically a business assistance meeting, okay? So we're just making sure that you're following up, that you're adhering to your institution's policies and procedures, and you're spending the money the way that you stated you would spend the money, and you're using the funds as they are allowed, okay? And it's a business assistance meeting to help you, not to hurt you. So please respond to us if we reach out to you for a site visit, okay? And lastly, and I do have some other slides after this, but these were the points I wanted to hit on. NSF, we don't monitor or track the amount of times you contact us. We actually welcome it. So if you have questions at any time, please contact me directly. On your award, it may have my name or it may have Rashawn's name because he filled in for me while I was on a detail for a few months. But I am your actual grants management specialist, so you can reach out to me, and my phone number will be provided at the end of the slides, okay? So ask early and ask often. This is just a slide stating what I said earlier. If you need to move money out of participant support or you have a change of scope or objective, that needs to have prior written approval from your program, NSF program officer, okay? I threw this in because it deals with the federal appropriations cancellation. So I know some of your awards were made in 21 and some of them were, some of them made in 20 and some were made in 21. Kathleen, are those the new awardees that's on this Zoom? I'm sorry.
All the new, it should be all 21 money.
Okay, all 21 money. So that means you have until September 30th, 2027 to spend that first pot of money. Now, if you get supplements along the way, then of course that will change. So say, for example, next year you get a supplement for using 22 funds. That supplement money will expire September 30th, 2028. So I just like to throw that in there just for, so you'll know when you get an email from DFM years down the road, why they're saying your funding is expired. The money is good for like 6 years once you receive it, unless it's no year money.
Janelle, since you called my name, can I add something to something you just said?
Yes.
If you have what we referred to as a continuing grant, which Mike mentioned earlier when he gave the example of your award is $1 million, but we only gave you $600,000 up front. That's a good thing because the next increment that you get, which is at the beginning of your 4th year, is going to be from a new appropriation.
Mm-hmm.
So Janelle, you want to go and explain how that helps them with their versus their 2021 money?
Yes. So because you'll have 2 sets of funding. So the first set, so 21 is the first 3 years. Those funds won't expire until 2027. But you said what, 2024, they'll get the next increment?
Right.
That funding won't expire until 2030. So your award, yeah, you have a lot of time to spend that money if need be, if applicable, if your program officers allow you to continue to extend your award. Because we can't extend the award past the expiration date of the funding. Okay, so if anyone has a question about that statement, we'll get to it at the end, or you can put it in the chat. And I hope I didn't confuse anyone. So once again, we cannot extend an award past the funding's cancellation / expiration date. So if your last set of funds expire on 9/30/2030, we can't extend your period of performance past that date. Now, if you were to receive a funding supplement prior to that, then the supplements can add time if need be, if there are additional tasks, there are justifications for receiving supplements, not just because you want to extend the time on your award. Okay, so I'll move on before I start getting anyone any more confused. Okay, this is just a screenshot of where you would go in FastLane to do any type of request. So I'm not sure if you can see my mouse or not. Can you see my mouse? Okay, so over here, if you need to add a sub-award, withdraw a PI or co-PI, this is where the NSF approved no-cost extension, but that's not the one you want to do first. The first one you want to do is over here, the grantee approved no-cost extension. And change of PI, changes of objective scopes. This is just what the screen looks like where you will go in to make your request. And once you submit them, they will go to with the exception of the grantee approved no cost extension. You will not receive an award notice for that because you're actually approving it yourself. but you will be able to go into research.gov and see the new end date as well as your new reporting dates, okay? But all of the other actions, once they are processed and awarded, you will receive an award notice by email. Okay, upcoming deadlines. If you, let's see here, make sure your PIs and co-PIs submit their reports on time. As I said earlier, if there's a change to the PI or co-PI, please submit your request in FastLane or research.gov as soon as possible. And the last data, if you're funded, if your award is already active and you have access to your funding, the last day to draw down fundings for this current fiscal year is September 23rd, 2021, okay? Ask early, ask often. This is my contact information. And what I will do now is pass the torch or the mic over to Maggie.
So again, my name is Maggie Carlin, and I am, well, first, let me welcome you to the new awardee session. I am here to do a presentation about the additional reporting requirement called the Noyce Annual Data Collection. And I apologize, my video is a little dark, and I'm sorry, I try to do better lighting, but this is just really the best I can do. So this slide, just to, again, do an introduction. My name is Maggie. I am the ICF project manager for this data collection, and I ordinarily co-host this presentation with my colleague, Patrick Higgins, but he's on vacation this week. But I wanted to mention his name because he is our lead technical support team member, and he's incredibly helpful and answers many questions, and you will probably interact with him over the course of this reporting. So just a quick agenda for this presentation. I will cover an overview of the annual data collection, just sort of summarize what it is, when it's due, and then we'll take a deeper dive into the actual survey questionnaire. So first starting with the Track 1 Scholarship and Stipend Award reporting, and then for the sake of time and because they're so similar, a combined overview of the Track 2 Teaching Fellowship Award reporting and the Track 3 Master Teaching Fellowship Award reporting. And then I think at the end, there's a time for questions for not just this, but for everyone. So first, a quick overview. So what is this annual data collection? It is entirely separate from the annual reports that were just previously discussed. This is part of a program monitoring effort. So this is data that is provided to NSF to either meet their own federal reporting requirements, but also for evaluation purposes to measure progress towards any strategic goals for the Noyce program. The data that you provide is always viewed at an aggregate level. So if there are any concerns about any of that PII data that you might report for a recipient, it's never used at that level when it's being used for federal reporting or for evaluation. It's just an aggregate of the totals that we receive. The collection is administered by a third-party contractor. That's the ICF that I mentioned before. That's the company that I work with. And we have a Noyce technical support team that is me, Patrick Higgins, and one other of our colleagues who's new to this. She's not here today, but Jedediah Berhanu. So we are here to support you. We are here to answer your questions as you work through this, which I think is a pretty common theme of all the program officers throughout this presentation. So this next slide just covers the collection timeline, the period of time for when we are collecting this data. So we typically open in mid-September, so that will be this coming September 2021. And the collection cycle is open for about 12 weeks. So data is due in early December. We do allow extensions to this data reporting. It's not as severe, but we do hope for you to get it in as soon as possible, and we try to make extensions rare. Additionally, there is a reporting period. So all awards have a set time frame for which their data is being reported, that the time frame for that data represents. That is always September 1 through August 30th. I'm sorry, August 31st. So this upcoming cycle, that's September 1, 2020, August 31st, 2021. So that represents, the data that you're reporting covers that time period. And what you can expect is that you will receive consistent reminders from us. You will, as I mentioned, receive support from us. We have a support team we are here to help you. And also emails from the support@noyceweb.org email address. I just like to highlight that because it's a separate NSF. We're not an nsf.gov email address. We're new, so when you see it for the first time, you know who we are and what we're contacting you about. So this slide is just a very high level summary of the data that we collect, and I'll get into this in more detail in the next couple of slides, but we collect information on your post-secondary institutions, those partner institutions, the school districts, again, those partner school districts that you work with, nonprofit organizations, if you are a teaching fellowship or master teaching fellowship award, your Noyce recipients, which is really the bulk of the reporting that you do will be about your Noyce recipients. And then Noyce interns, again, that's applicable only to the Noyce Scholarship and Noyce Stipend Awards. And this slide just covers communications that you receive from us, just so you can get a sense of when you'll hear from us. So 2 weeks prior to the opening of the data collection, so usually about mid to late August, I think more late August, you'll get a pre-launch email just letting you know that it's coming and then to start preparing. And then on the day that we open, which is again will be early to mid-September, you'll receive the opening email, which includes detailed instructions for how do you access the online data collection system. It's called Noyce Web. We provide you with login credentials and then just additional instructions for completing the reporting. Phone calls, we try not to pester you, but if the first few weeks of the data collection pass by and you haven't logged in yet, we may reach out via phone. We just want to check in. We want to make sure that you received our emails, that you can access the system, and that there aren't any technical issues that would impede your reporting. And then finally, we send reminders throughout the data collection cycle. We start at about the midpoint and then increase the frequency as the due date nears. This is not to pester you. It's just to ensure this stays on your radar and that you to steal Janelle's phrase, and ask frequently and ask early. So this slide is to give you a little bit of an explanation, I guess, of how the life cycle of your reporting works, because there is no set timeline of you certainly begin your reporting at the start of your award, but you don't necessarily end your reporting at the expiration of that award. So let me start at the beginning. So when you first start reporting, if you are a Track 1 or Track 2 award, you report baseline data. Master Teaching Fellows don't report this data, and I'll get to that. So baseline data is data for 1 year prior to receiving your award. It is reported for post-secondary institutions. And just to kind of summarize very generally, it's essentially total numbers for graduation rates from STEM disciplines. And it's a little bit varied depending on your award type. If you're a Master Teaching Fellow, the reason you don't report this data is obviously you're working with teachers who are already graduated. You're not working with recipients that are working towards a degree. Then, so if you are a Track 1 or Track 2 award, you start this reporting in September 2020 with that first year of reporting. Then in your September 2021. Then with your second year of reporting, September 2022, that's when you complete the full survey. So every data entry screen is what you report. If you are a Master Teaching Fellowship Award, you actually don't start reporting September 2021, but you do start reporting September 2022, and it's the full survey. You just have that distinction since you don't have a baseline data reporting as part of your award. And then finally, that last column going forward is really encompassing everything thereafter. And the most important takeaway is that you continue reporting to this program monitoring data collection until all of your recipients have either met the requirements or left the program. Ideally, we want them to meet the requirements, but until they come to one of those two endpoints, that is, when you've completed reporting for each of those recipients. And this slide just kind of, I take this straight from the program solicitation, so you've likely seen it before, but it's just sort of to again emphasize sort of that life cycle by pointing out, you know, the teaching expectations and then the time, the frame that they have to complete it. So for a scholarship recipient, they are expected to teach 2 years per each year of support, and they have up to 8 years to do it. For a stipend recipient, they are expected to teach 2 years, and they have up to 4 years to complete that service. Teaching fellowship recipients are expected to teach for 4 years and have up to 6 years. And then master teaching fellowship recipients are expected to teach 5 years and have up to 7 years. And again, that's straight from the solicitation, but I highlight it for the point of sort of emphasizing there's variability in how long a student can take to complete that service requirement, and that even flexibility alone is also built into it. So there can be a range, and I highlight it not to scare you, but to just emphasize the importance of tracking those students and staying in touch with them, so that you can be doing this for quite some time, and that you're able to accurately report their status and comply with this piece of the reporting. So next, this is where I'll do that kind of deep dive into the survey questionnaire. I'm going to start with the Track 1 awards survey questionnaire. Then we'll do sort of a combined Track 2 and Track 3, since they're very, very similar. And wherever there's sort of overlap, I'll highlight that, so we're not kind of going over things twice. So for any award, regardless if you're Track 2, Track 3, or Track 1, your landing page is always going to be this main menu page. It's always very similar. On the left-hand side, you have sort of a reminder of what the reporting period is. On the top right-hand side, you have a legend that lets you know the status of each data entry screen, whether it needs to be completed or whether you've completed it. The links beneath the words main menu is the actual survey questionnaire. So when you log in, you'll select each of these links, and that's where you'll start your reporting. And then on the left-hand side, there's some helpful resources for you, access to useful information, instructions, FAQs to help you complete your reporting. So the first data entry screen is the post-secondary institutions data entry screen. And I should also pause and just note that this is all test data. This isn't any kind of real data that we're using. When you first log in as a new award, the first thing you're going to have to do is add institution, and that button is always available to you at the bottom of that data entry screen. So that's the very first thing that you'll have to do. These screenshots, I tried to capture screenshots, but they're very long, and so they don't really work well into a presentation. So this is just sort of a snippet of some of the data that you report. This covers baseline data, but essentially for post-secondary institutions, oops, jumped ahead. You report the name of the institution, the city, the location, whether or not it's active. Potentially if you're just starting out, you may be a partner isn't active in the institution or in the project immediately, or more likely at the end of the award, if you're just tracking students, the post-secondary institution might not be active. So that's when you would report active versus inactive. You report that baseline data that we mentioned before, and this is representative of the scholarship and stipend recipients award reporting. And then this baseline data, we have another question for it that we would say current year, data. We take the baseline, but then you also report the same data each year as you are reporting that. And then in addition, we collect applicant data, so the total number of students that are applying for this program based on stipend or scholarship, I think it's broken out. We also collect data for faculty, the total number of faculty that are involved in the project, broken out by their discipline. And then also we collect data on the program activities that those faculties are involved in. So our next data entry screen is for school districts. So again, when you, it's the same sort of process as a new award, you will have to go to the bottom of the screen and add your school districts initially. And then once you do that, the list of school districts will appear here each year of your reporting. And I don't think I mentioned that for post-secondary institutions, but that it works similarly. You add them all in your initial year, and then they just appear there as your list of partners going forward. And then for partner school districts, we collect their name, city, state, whether or not they're active. And again, that applies to either at the very beginning of the award, perhaps you don't have students teaching in these school districts just yet, so they're not active, potentially, or at the end of it, if you only have a few school students teaching still, not all of your partners are active, then you would also report here that they may not be active. And then if they are active, you would report the number of schools within the district that are participating in this in your project. So next we have the scholarship data entry screen. And again, you go to the bottom of the screen and you'll have to enter your new scholarship recipients. And then the list of your recipients will appear at the top, and they will remain there through the course of your reporting. And again, this is just a very quick screen capture of not the full data entry screen, but this next slide better represents just a summary of the data that we collect for each of your recipients. So for each Noyce scholarship recipient, we collect demographic data, which includes gender, race, ethnicity, and disability as well. We collect academic data, which would be the year, so whether or not they are a junior or a senior when they begin in the program, their major, their GPA, and what program activities they participated in. We collect funding support, so we collect an actual dollar amount and then the number of terms that they received that support. We collect teaching information in the form of their intended level of teaching. So where do they intend to be once they complete this program? What grade they intend to teach, what subject area. We collect completion data. So we want to know when they've completed that teacher preparation program, as well as the time frame for when they complete the certification, obtain the certification. And then once we've got all that basic information and they've completed their programs, we start collecting their teaching placement information. So where are they teaching? What school, what district, the high need criteria, the actual grade level that they're teaching in, as well as the subject areas. Another piece that's very important to this is the number of years teaching. So for each year that you're reporting that student, in their first year, we would want you to tell us that that's their first year of teaching in fulfillment of that service requirement. The next year, we want you to tell us that's their second year of teaching in fulfillment of the service requirement. And it's important to track those number of years accurately, because when we are reviewing your data, when you come to the end of that reporting cycle, we look to see, this scholarship recipient, they received 2 years of support, so they have to teach for 4 years. So we check their data and see, did they teach for 4 years to meet that requirement? So it's just very important that, for you, that you're mindful of that and that you're tracking their years of support and accurately reporting it. And that'll just avoid any kind of data review and, addressing data questions at the end of your reporting cycle. So next we have the scholarship stipend screen. It works just as stipend, Noyce stipend screen that works just as the scholarship screen. Here's just a quick look at the data entry screen. And then I think I'm getting a little short on time, so I'm just going to kind of keep moving here. I would just highlight that the only difference in the data that we collect for stipends versus scholarship is that the degrees held, since these are post-baccalaureate recipients, and whether or not they were a career changer before returning to the teaching certification. And then post-scholarship screen, this is just a distinction between recipients that are active and that they're receiving funding versus those that aren't. It's just a way, you don't actually have to do anything to distinguish this other than to report when their funding ended, but it's just something that we do as part of the reporting. We move them into this data entry screen if their funding ended. And it's just a quick screenshot of that screen, but it's very similar to what's reported for stipend recipients or scholarship recipients when they're active. And then for Track 1 awards, we also collect intern data. You would add your intern recipient. You report their name, demographic information, academic information, and the type of internship they participated in. So next, we'll move into Teaching Fellowship and Master Teaching Fellowship Awards. So again, your landing page is the same as a scholarship or stipend recipient award. It works the exact same way. The survey questionnaire, the links to the different sections are listed there underneath the WORD's main menu, and you report in the same order. In addition to reporting to for your post-secondary institutions and your scholarship, your school districts, your partner school districts, you also report nonprofit organizations, and it's the same process for, as I've stated before, since you're all new awards, you will add them initially, and your list of nonprofit organizations will appear above it, and they will be carried forward each year. And then for nonprofit organizations, we collect the name, city, state, whether or not they were active during the current reporting year, and any activities that the nonprofit organization was involved in. For the Noyce Teaching Fellowship Awards, again, you, just as I previously, you would add the teaching fellowship recipient initially, and then they will appear above it. And just a quick screenshot of that data entry screen, and then a summary of the data that is collected for each teaching fellowship recipient, which is very similar to what we collect for scholars and stipend recipients: demographic data, academic data, funding, teaching information, completion of that master's degree and obtaining their teaching certification, and then as well as their teaching placement. The one distinction that I would note here is regarding funding, because these recipients receive both a stipend and a salary, so that you are mindful of when they are working towards that degree, they haven't received it yet, you report their funding as their stipend funding. Then once they begin teaching in fulfillment of that service requirement, that is where you report the salary supplement. If you run into questions as you're moving through this, we are absolutely here to help you work through it, but I just wanted to highlight that distinction for the teaching fellowship recipients. And then next, the master teaching fellowship recipients. Again, you will add them initially as your first year of reporting. The list will appear here in this section as you, and will remain there, and as you work through your reporting. Quick screenshot of the actual data entry screen. And then the data that we collect for master teaching fellowship recipients is essentially the same: demographic data, funding data, academic data. There is a few distinctions in that potentially your master teaching fellowship could have been a previous Noyce scholar or stipend, and you would report that here. We also collect data on the number of years that master teacher taught before they became part of the Noyce Master Teaching Program. And we also collect recognition information about how that master teacher was recognized as a master teacher. So lastly, just wanted to kind of highlight, again, the helpful resources that we have available to you that are on the left-hand side of the main menu screen. And also point out this sort of red circled help with this screen. That follows you throughout every data collection screen you're in. So, in this case, if you're in the post-secondary institution screen, this little link follows you there, and it gives you more specified instructions for that data entry screen. So then if you moved into the school district data entry screen, we also have this link that has more specified information for what should be reported for school districts. So it's another sort of helpful tool to use as you're working through your reporting. And finally, I would just highlight our contact information, which we will be reaching out to you as the time nears, so you'll have that. But again, here's our email address, our phone number, and just emphasizing that tech support is available 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. And my last slide, I would just note is, the data is due typically in early December. And we have a pretty large data collection population at this point. This is a wonderful program with many awards. And we often receive much of our tech support requests and, reaching out for help at this sort of December timeframe. And I would really encourage you to try and reach out earlier and pose your questions earlier if you can. We try to respond as soon as possible, but when that December due date runs around with so many questions, there sometimes can be delay. We try not to, but I would just emphasize try getting in there early, working on it early, and getting those questions asked early so you don't have any sort of last minute panic towards the end. So with that, that is the end of my presentation, and I think I will turn it over to Jennifer because we are just at time.
Thanks so much, Maggie, for that helpful presentation. At this point, we're going to open up the floor for any questions you might have, and please feel free to direct your questions to any of our presenters. And to start us off, I believe, Carrie Ann, if you'd like to try to unmute and ask your question. Kathleen thought it would be beneficial for the whole group to hear.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My question was just about in terms of the data reporting, when we go in to fill out the stuff and do the drop down boxes, what are just the choices for the gender, race, ethnicity categories? Because I'd like to make sure that I just use the same choices, make it easy, like when they apply for the scholarship or whatever.
So we use male, female, or not reported. And that is in alignment with OMB categories. We use all of OMB categories for gender. It's same for race and ethnicity. And I think there's been discussions about, changes to that, but we are all sort of dictated by OMB as the categories that we provide there.
Great. There's another question that just came in from Brian. Are DACA students eligible for funding?
No, DACA students are not eligible for funding. We've gotten a legal ruling on this. They are not.
Thanks, Kathleen. Everyone, please feel free to keep the questions going in the chat. Here's one from Kathleen Cullen. Does a timeline on a single sheet exist that designates when everything is due, or do I need to develop such a thing?
You could certainly develop something if you're talking about ICF. Maggie, do you have a timeline that you send out to them so they know what to report? But as far as the annual reports to NSF, they are due 90 days, 3 months before what your start date. So if your start date was October 1, your annual report each year is due July.
And I would add for our reporting, there's really just one deadline that you have to be concerned with. It's just, we give you sort of 3 months to do your reporting. You can certainly submit it earlier if that works with your schedule. But we have one due date, which we will certainly remind you of. It's typically, I think last year, I want to say it was December 5th that it was due. And we generally stick to that timeline. There isn't much variation in that. But when we work with our NSF colleagues to firm our schedule for the upcoming cycle, we start reminding you with the opening email through the end of the reminders that we send. And there's really just one due date for us, at least, that you have to be mindful of.
Great, thank you. And please keep your eye on the chat. There's some important clarifications, like one from Janelle, that lapse or cancellation of funding is the date the funding expires, and end date is the last day of performance for your award. And Sue is referring attendees to the PAPPG, so keep that close to you as you traverse your award, and Jennifer referred people to the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. But we do still have time for questions, and we have lots of experts on the line. So now's a great time to ask any burning questions you've been holding on to. I'm going to use my teacher wait time while people are chatting in, or you can unmute. And I see one. Thanks, Matt. Once a change of PI request is submitted, how long does that take to get approved?
So it's good to discuss ahead of time with your program officer. And this could be a change of the actual lead PI or a co-PI. It's then submitted into research.gov. And then the program officer will need to review it. And that's why it's good to have the conversation ahead of time. And then the program officer approves it, but it then has to go to the Division of Grants and Agreements. So it goes to Janelle Garcia, and then she deals with it. So I would tell you that you probably ought to allow a month. It could be less than that, hopefully, but because it has to go through several entities, and you could put it in, and we might be in the middle of running panels, and we don't stop and look at it until after the panels are over. So there's some lost time there. So it's just, we try to get them done as quickly as possible, but there can be some lag time.
Great, thanks, Kathleen. And while attendees are thinking of any more questions for presenters, everybody was very good at keeping to time. So I want to offer presenters an opportunity if there were any words of wisdom or advice you wanted to get in but didn't have a chance that you'd like to share, please do so.
So I'll chime in with one little nugget for everybody. And this comes up in conversation when we talk to each other when new program officers come on board in the division. Unlike academic culture, working within the federal government and all of the prescriptions that lie there, you really want to attend to the notion that you ought not ask for forgiveness. Rather, you should really attend to asking permission, because you might make assumptions that are perfectly valid in an academic space, but are not valid in a federal regulatory space. And this is where being a PO in Noyce sometimes becomes unpleasant. We might have to chase you down, and we would have to make corrections to a decision that you made that was not advised by one of us. So if you have something that you're not quite sure about, please ask first. Don't make a decision and then find out later that we have to go back and undo your decision because it was ill-advised.
Very important advice, Tom, and I'll just reiterate what Janelle said earlier, a theme today of reach out early and often for everyone.
Yes, I'd like to add to that, reaching out early and often. I definitely think that that's important. But one of the things that's important is that the lead PI should be the person reaching out to the program officer for questions. It can become challenging when emails are coming from the grants office and the budget office and this person and that person at your institution. I've even gotten emails from the president of institutions, and they're not copying the co-PIs, they're not using the number sometimes of the grant, and it does take up time. So I love talking to my PIs. It's one of our favorite part of the job. But do help your institution understand that having that one path of communication really does help keep everything nice and organized.
Great, thanks, Connie. Looking at the chat here, we are working on our agreement document for the scholars to sign. Are there examples or templates of agreements that can be shared?
NSF does not provide these, but you can certainly share in the sense that past projects that are on the wonderful NSF Noyce.org website, which AAAS maintains. You can contact any of those projects and ask them if they'd be willing to share their agreement documents. And but if you get a document from another project, there are two things that I would really encourage you to do. First of all, make sure that it mirrors the current situation of your the solicitation under which you were funded, because remember, older projects were funded under different solicitations. And then make sure your legal department looks over whatever the document is and gives its approval.
Great. Second and third time awardees on the call who could share some advice. And thank you, Anthony, for raising your hand. If anyone has any examples of things they want to share, also please feel free to get in touch with AAAS so we could help build out a library on the Noyce site of relevant resources. Well, I think that might be a good place to wrap up unless anyone else has any final words or final questions.
Jennifer, I have one thing to say. When you're sending correspondence to any of us at NSF, in the subject line, please put your grant number in the subject line. It will really help us do any kind of background research when we have to call you back. So make sure you include your grant number in the subject line of any correspondence via email.
Thanks for the tip, Rashawn and Kathleen.
I just want to say that we are really excited that all of your projects are joining the Noyce family of projects. Hopefully in the future, we'll all be able to get together in Washington, D.C. in the summer, and you'll really get a sense of what an amazing community you are now becoming a part of. I know that today has been very dry. We wanted to make sure that we got important information out to you in a short period of time because we understand that we can all have Zoom fatigue. So I just want to tell you that we celebrate that you have joined our community and that you are going to be doing the work of supporting amazing teachers and also doing research on the work that the Noyce projects and others that are engaged in making sure that STEM teachers persist and are effective in high need schools. So we celebrate all the projects and we thank our colleagues at AAAS for creating this forum today for us to share information.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. We just have a few other thank yous, of course, to all of our presenters today, Noyce program officers who took the time to join us, Tom, Kathleen, Sue, Mike, Bon, John, and Jennifer, thank you. Also to DGA colleagues, Janelle, Rashawn, and Denise, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and for ICF for all the great Noyce web reporting info. Thank you so much, Maggie. I would also be remiss if I didn't thank my amazing AAAS Noyce team. First, Betty Callinger, who among other efforts made matches for the upcoming mentor program. She also coordinates our RISE blogs and alumni profiles, to which we hope you will contribute, and definitely contact Betty if you have not yet submitted your project locator information. Next, Lauren Munir, who is our communications maven and coordinates the Arise newsletter that comes to your inbox monthly. And Thomas Vague, who is pinch hitting on our Noyce team to lend us his super video editing talents that made the earlier Scholar Fellow Inspiration commercial possible.